Welcome back to the Act Out podcast. Excuse me, the season premiere of the Act Out podcast. I'm your host, Adam Tomlin. That's right. Happy birthday. Happy birth year, America. Yeah, 250 years. It's been a long one. Kind of a reason to celebrate. Probably not with a crown, because we're actually going back to 1776. You know, there's something about even-numbered birthday years where makes you get all nostalgic. And had me wondering, how in the world did 13 colonies that were so different, with different personalities, different cultures, how did they unite together around these common ideals? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, I know, they stole my thing. Well, thanks to Colonial Williamsburg, I was able to sit down with Colonel Patrick Henry, and we had a phenomenal conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. And as for me, give me liberty. And Patrick Henry, let's roll the tape. Colonel, thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
It was my great pleasure, sir.
So I, right off the bat, want to ask you a question. I've been trying to do some research in anticipation of talking with you. And I had heard that while you were growing up, you would go to different church services with your mom.
I would, yes, sir.
And then on the ride back, she would ask you to recite the sermon that the pastor had given.
That is so.
That is so. Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm very excited about that. I knew that I'd heard it, but looking back, I could not find any other.
Indeed. Well, my mother, she wanted to make certain that I had took the lesson that the preacher was trying to give us. My mother was a dissenter, she was a Presbyterian. And in those days, Presbyterians were rather a new caste here in Virginia. It was during the time of the Great Awakening. And oftentimes when she would ask me on the ride home to explain what I'd heard, I was not able to oblige her.
Would you get in trouble for that, or?
Well, I would get in a bit of trouble, and she would say, "Patrick, you're not getting off this carriage until you tell me what you heard this morning." But I'm afraid that the preachers were so fine in their preaching that I had no idea what they had preached about when the sermon was over.
Yeah.
Sadly, I'm told that gentlemen often take the same from my speeches. Mr. Jefferson told me once that he heard my speech and that it was his favorite speech, the finest speech he ever heard, he told me, but he couldn't remember what it was about. So this is a peculiarity with preachers and orators, where they can bring the crowd to such a passion that all recollection of what they heard is gone, and all they remember is the feeling of it. Right?
Yes.
And that's what I remember. I often remember feeling terror when I would come away from one of those preachings, because they spoke with such fire and such passion and of such awesome things, such terrifying things, right? There's one sermon. I remember when the great Reverend Samuel Davies came to Hanover, where I did grow up. He told us that mankind was akin to a spider being held over a flame by the hand of God. And God regarded that spider with more contempt, with more loathing than we would regard the most pusillanimous infusoria beheld beneath Mr. With's microscope.
Wow.
Aye.
Yeah.
And that it was only the love of Jesus Christ, the intervention of that love, what prevented the hand of God from releasing and sending that spider to its just reward. And that terrified me. I had nightmares of that as a boy for years. And I remembered how inspired I were to know that there was a force in the world what loved me so well, and that loved my mother and loved my brothers so well and my sisters, that we would be spared this fate that we justly deserve, this pit of fire because of his love. And that's always stayed with me. And as a Christian man, when people ask me why I believe in the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, it's because of his love and his great passion for me and for all of mankind.
So you actually touched on a couple of really good points there. One, I actually, so growing up, I was in it wasn't a Presbyterian church, but we actually talked about like the end of the world.
Yeah,
it was supposedly imminent.
Aye.
And so being in that service as a kid, that was pretty scary for me.
Indeed.
And so what I would do a lot of times is, instead of, like, whenever the church, the sermon got too scary,
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily listen to what the pastor said, but actually how he said it.
Aye.
And there was this way that he could control the crowd with just the inflection of his voice.
Yes, sir.
If he wanted you somber
Mm-hmm.
and sad,
Aye.
he could make it.
Yes,
If he wanted you excited, he could do it.
he sure could.
And just watching how he would use his body language and just the inflection of himself, and he could control the whole crowd. That was so fascinating to me. And it seems like you kind of took a little bit from that as well, right? Like, watching the pastor and how he would inflect.
What I know of oration and speechifying, I owe to those preachers in part, but I also owe to my mother. She had that same power.
Mm-hmm.
She would have the entire table electrified when we were meeting for Christmastide supper. Everyone would be hanging upon her last word. And had she been born a man, I have no doubt that my mother would have sat in the Burgess.
Really?
Yes, sir. Aye.
Do you think that a great orator is born, or is he made?
He's born.
Born. Okay.
It's a gift that the good Lord gives you. Now, the good Lord can give you a gift, just like a man can give you a gift, right?
Mhm.
And you might choose to leave that gift on the table and let it collect dust. Right? Say someone gives you a fowler piece, and you don't care to hunt. You care to go to the market to purchase your food. Well, that instrument will rot. That it will atrophy and fall to pieces. But if you take it out every day into the woods
Mhm.
and you hone your craft, you will eventually bring home great quantities of ducks and squirrels and other fine things for the table. Well, that's how it works. I suppose I'm told, and I don't care to flatter myself, but I'm told that I have
I'll
some,
flatter you. That's
well,
okay.
no, as well. I'm just told that I have some aptitude for speaking.
Mhm.
Well, the good Lord put that in me, but I chose to cultivate it. At first, through lawyering. I was a lawyer for some 5 years before I became a burgessman. And during that time, I was able to try and learn, and I learned a lot by failing.
Mm.
Indeed, a man has to fail quite a bit in this life
Yeah.
before he knows how to succeed. And so I thank the Lord for this gift, and I've made the best use I can of it.
Mhm.
And I would feel it almost to be a heresy if I did not use this ability, not to aggrandize myself, but for the benefit of my
Right.
fellow man.
Yeah, okay, that absolutely makes sense.
Awesome.
You had mentioned before in your earlier answer about you went to church during the time of the Great Awakening.
I see, yes.
So prior to this Great Awakening movement, from what I know, sermons were much more heady. They would be
yes.
very long and dense.
Mhm.
They would basically just be read from a book, or like read from, basically like a legal argument. one
Yes,
would speak.
exactly so, exactly so.
Now, the new the Great Awakening people, they spoke to the heart,
Aye.
not the head.
Aye, that is so, yes.
And whenever you were talking about Thomas Jefferson saying that is the finest speech I have ever heard, I have no idea what you said.
Precisely.
You were speaking to the heart.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And first, before I go on with this, I must tell you, sir, that I love my uncle. I love my uncle. God knows, I'm named for him, actually.
No.
Yes, indeed. But having said that, I must tell you that my uncle believes in that old way of preaching, where he's preaching to the head and not the heart, where he's going to take sermons and Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and he's going to, in a very cerebral, scholarly fashion, make a sermon of it.
On Leviticus, I feel very sorry for any congregant.
Well, he's done it before, and he'll do it again. I have no doubt about it, sir.
Sorry.
Yes, no, that is his way, sir, and that is the way of many other old light preachers, and that's fine. But you're not going to reach but so many. The word is not going to reach but so many. Your tenant farmer will not understand that, right? Your blacksmith's apprentice will not understand that. And even your Negro slave out in the field will not understand that. And by not understanding, they will be denied the grace and the word of Christ. And I feel for that, because the day of judgment will come. As you said, it will come. And every soul must be ready to stand before the Creator and give account of himself. And it is difficult for them to understand the path that will bring them to that day in a righteous state, in a state of grace, if they cannot hear what's being preached on Sunday.
You're about to have me convert now.
Well, so I dare say it's. I'm no preacher man myself.
Well, and I can feel the passion in your voice, though. I mean, that's what's so effective. I mean, if you were trying to logic me into this, I don't.
Well, that's the trouble of the old lights. I must say that this sort of scholarly persuasion, it just doesn't take well for most men, and that's what was so revolutionary about the Great Awakening. It was Christianity not brought to some new state, rather, but brought back to its root, right? Jesus Christ, he did not preach to great aristocrats. Nay, he preached to fishermen and harlots. He preached to the people. He loved the people. Christ loved the people. And so too did these preachers of the Great Awakening, especially the Reverend Samuel Davies, who I'll never forget. Greatest man I ever met and finest orator.
He was your pastor in Hanover, correct?
He was one, yes. So he come by quite often through Hanover. Yes, indeed.
So, you were talking about your uncle and how he was a little bit more with the old guard.
Yes.
It seems like that old guard, there was a very strong emphasis on ceremony and on ritual.
Aye, all the trappings. Aye, yes. Indeed. Yes, sir.
You know who else likes ceremony and rituals?
Who's that, sir?
King George III.
Yes, he does.
That chap-lipped scallywag.
Is very, I could say many things about King George, which I probably ought not to say. Us ladies will probably be looking at this, and I better keep my tongue. But yes.
Well, but that's actually a point, though, that I was going to make. It seems as if the Great Awakening, it was kind of a time whenever the colonists were one of the first times were able to kind of think of themselves individually and their relationship with God, and not have as much of an emphasis on their relationship with the king and with ceremony and being a British.
Well, indeed, sir. Well, in the great revolution of the 17th century is not the Bill of Rights. It's not throwing one man off the throne to put another on. It's the annihilation in the English-speaking world of the idea that the king is somehow appointed by God. This is a heresy. This is an abomination. This is idolatry, is what it is. To imagine that a man is chosen by God, that he is second only to God. That is a ridiculous idea, not fit for the mind of a child.
I'm from a few hundred years in the present. And what you're saying, you could say that today, or you could say that in my time, and it not be a big deal. But we're in 1776. You saying that the king isn't appointed by God, some people consider that treason, do they not?
Well, the fine thing is, by this day, by 1776, by my time, that idea was largely taken for granted in the English-speaking world. That we had done away with this notion of kings and their absolute divine right to rule and that sort of business. The king was now rightfully seen as a chief magistrate of the empire. The same way you choose a county sheriff. Now, it was a hereditary office, and we still had all the nonsense with that, but we knew that he was no divinely chosen fellow. Now, in France, men still felt that way. In Spain and Russia and most of the Western world, except for Holland. But we and the Dutch alone, amongst all mankind, had done away with that notion during the previous century, during the bloody Civil War, during the glorious revolution of the 17th century. The English-speaking world had put that idea away, and we had embraced the notion of constitutional monarchy, and the monarch as being a constitutional officer. Yes, hereditary, yes, for life, but chosen by man, not by God.
Can you speak a little bit to the kind of evolution of belief to where it went from we are loyal subjects to the crown to where he isn't appointed by God necessarily, but he, while being the chief magistrate, he's just he's one among many.
I remember when my friends came home after the war. The war, of course, was still raging in other parts of the world, but after Quebec, it was done in Virginia.
This is the French and Indian War, the Seven Years' War.
Yes, sir. Indeed.
Yes.
And they marched home. At least some of them did. Some of them did never come back. But the ones who did marched proudly through the streets of Hanover. And we all yelled out, "God save the king." They marched right there and formed right in front of the courthouse and performed their exercises. And we were all so proud to be British that day, because we imagined ourselves to be partners in a great enterprise that stretched the length and breadth of the world. Soon thereafter, we learned that we were not partners. Many of our boys had gone off to fight because we had promises that the Ohio frontier would be open.
Yes.
If we drove out the French, we would then have that land. Those promises were broken before the ink was even dry on the peace treaty. They gave that land back to the Indians, so they did. After the rebellion of Pontiac, that was the king's solution. Not to negotiate with the Indians, not to fight a few wars to perhaps secure some extra territory for the people who had secured English dominion over North America. Nay, close it off. Make certain that poor people will always be poor, that there's no land for the poor. That's what he did. He broke his word to us. Those veterans were promised land. He received none. And so that's when we started to realize that we were not indeed partners in this enterprise at all. Now, if anyone had any doubt of it, it became very clear when he vetoed the Two Pennies Act. Are you familiar with that, sir?
Vaguely, but I believe you are way more familiar with it than I am.
It caused me some success. I must say, I'm not disinterested in this event.
Well, I've never argued in front of my dad before. I don't know if that helped you out or not, but
well, it did, sir. It did. And you are correct to point out that I had advantages in that trial. I surely did. And those were terrible times. You know, we had failed crops for years. That being in the late 50s and early 60s. And when the case came around in 63, the same year of the peace, the Two Pennies Act had protected. Well, I suppose I better back up the wagon a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna,
because y'all don't know about any of this, do you?
No, we don't.
So in the late 50s and early 60s, while the war was going on, the tobacco harvests were terrible during those years due to a combination of drought and flood. To make matters worse, there was a peculiarity in Virginia law, and that peculiarity said that the wage that public officials, government officials, those being clerks, and sheriffs, and priests, the wage they were paid was based upon the market price of tobacco. So the price lowers, their salaries go down, it goes up, it goes up. Let me ask you, so what happens to a thing when it becomes rare?
It becomes way more valuable.
So it does, sir. All right. And therefore, the salary of these officials, largely by accident, was going to increase by 5 times.
Nothing that they did on their own accord. It was purely just because how they were paid.
Of the death of all these tobacco crops, right? And these gentlemen, the farmers, not just the gentlemen, but the tenant farmers and the smallholders, they were all going to have to be paying 5 times an increase in tax during a period of ruination. They're already ruined. Now they're going to be ruined 5 times more. Now I say, thank God for the House of Burgesses, them gentlemen back then in the Burgess. Thank God for Governor Fauquier. They passed a law called the Two Pennies Act. And what that did is it took that price of tobacco in regard to the salaries, froze it, 2 pennies per pound, its usual price. So that meant that these gentlemen were going to be paid more or less what they'd always been paid, right? Now the clerks were well with this. The sheriffs, they were well with this. Surely the priests, yes? Surely these keepers of public virtue and morality,
right?
They were eager to sacrifice, weren't they?
I'm sure they were.
They were not. At all, sir. Nay.
That is shocking.
Oh, they were living, sir. They were living. Yes, indeed. In fact, they elected up a man by the name of Reverend Cam, who is still the president of William and Mary College just down the street there.
I don't trust him. There's something about that name.
Well, no, sir. And the gentleman, he may bring me up to court for slander upon this, but I'll tell you, any reading of the public record will confirm what I say. I'm not slandering him. I'm merely telling you what he did, right? And what he did is he got into a ship, and he sailed to England, and there he petitioned the bishop. He petitioned the Privy Council, and finally he went straight to King George himself and petitioned His Majesty to veto the Two Pennies Act. Now, surely old King George, that gentle burner of towns, that gracious usurper of rights, that righteous armor of slaves, surely he would never do such a thing, would he?
I doubt it.
Oh, not the king. Oh, yes, he would. Yes, he would. That paper, that bill was not on his desk, but 3 seconds' time when King George drew forth the Privy Seal and vetoed the Two Pennies Act.
It was Virginia's own democratically elected government.
And in those, yes, sir.
That passed that. Is that kind of, do you see that as a tyrannical move?
Well, if that's not, then I don't understand the definition of tyranny at all. It was ludicrous to suppose that one man could overturn the democratic will of an entire country. And yet that's what he did. So old Reverend Cam, he was just as pleased as he could be. He sailed back over across the water. When he got here, he gathered his preachers around him and he said, "Huzzah, boys, Hosanna, the day of glory is here." We get to sue the downtrodden and make our fortunes. Life is wonderful. Now, you had to start somewhere with this whole business. And so after the veto, they started in Hanover.
Their mistake.
Well, it was quite a mistake, sir. Yes, indeed. See, sheriffs collect the taxes. So if you want back taxes, who must you sue?
I believe you would have to sue the sheriff.
That is correct, sir. Yes.
Oh man, that's bad news.
Well, yeah, my friend John Lewis was the sheriff then, and he chose me as an afterthought. His case was lost already, so he says, "Well, I'll take old Henry. I suppose he'll do." I found my gift that day.
Yeah. But you hadn't been practicing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But you hadn't been practicing very long whenever you were assigned the case. It
was about 3 years, 2.5 roughly. I'd been practicing. Yes, sir.
Okay, so this was your big shot.
Yes, it were, and I knew it was going to be a popular trial. In fact, I asked my uncle right before the thing began not to attend because he would make me too nervous. And God knows
your namesake.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
indeed. And my uncle and I, we do disagree about many things, but I'll always be grateful to him that he left that day and did not attend the courtroom.
So during the trial, what's your argument style? Like, how are you going to argue in front of the jury?
Well, I told them the truth. Now, I did have advantages because I knew everyone in that jury. I used to.
Dad's the judge, the jury. Yeah, I can see where this is going, man. I would still be an attorney if I had things set up like that for me.
It was a pretty pleasing circumstance to me. And yet I had the one small trouble that the case had already been lost before any of us spoke a word. Right? So when it started, I could just sit and listen to the prosecutor. And the greed that he advocated, it sickened me, sir. It quite literally sickened me, just as the greed of the king and parliament sickened me now. So when it became my time to talk, something washed over me. And I spoke to that jury, and I told them that the Two Pennies Act was a good act, a righteous act, a benevolent act, and that by vetoing this act, King George had violated the sacred covenant between himself and the people, and in his behavior degenerated to the level of a tyrant. I see my father, he should have cut me off. Right?
Yeah, I would think so, yeah. I mean, just for your safety as well as courtroom decorum, I believe.
Well, yes, sir, but you see, I'd had very little success before my days of lawyering. I'd had 2 shops go bankrupt under me. I'd lost most of my land, had to sell off half of my slaves. And so father, he was probably somewhat skeptical as to whether or not his son would be successful in this life. So you should have seen him that day. After I started speechifying, my father, while he should have been overruling me, he just sat there in his magistrate's chair, tears streaming down his face, overcome with joy that his lackluster son was finally good at something. And my wife was the same. She was there crying in the courtroom, and well, since no one was going to stop me, I just went on.
Yeah.
And I started asking them about those priests there. And I asked them, I say, do they concern themselves with the questions of religion and humanity by exercising the precepts of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Oh, no, my friends. These rapacious harpies would take from their honest parishioner his last hoe cake. They would take from the widow and her orphan children the last milking cow. They would take the last bed, nay, the last blanket from the lying-in woman. They have turned your courtroom into their counting house. So they retired. That jury did for 5 minutes. They come back and they
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Yes, sir. That's all it was. And I realized that I had done well. I'm not going to pretend I didn't know that. And when they came in, I had a bit of a smile on my face, and I think the prosecutor he knew what was going on as well. He didn't look too happy. And the verdict came in. They awarded the priests 1 penny in damages. And they gave up that game pretty quick because they knew it was going to be the same way. Once the precedent was set in Hanover, no one would give them any quantity of money. And so the farmers were spared having their taxes raised by 5 times. And I felt well about that.
I would imagine this would make you very popular among the common people, your farmers and your blacksmiths, like the common man.
Well, they weren't unhappy with me, I dare say. Now, of course, the common man cannot vote, but the gentlemen freeholders of Hanover were also happy with me, and they went ahead and they elected me to the House of Burgess after that. And that's how I come to be here and to have been caught up in all this hubbub, what's occurred over the last 10 years.
Well, was the Two Pennies Act, was that passed to try to make up for some of the revenue from the French and Indian War, or the Great War, excuse me, the Great War?
No, so it wasn't even to do with that. It was just greed, just the sheer greed of these priests, that they saw a chance to raise their salaries by 5 times. And so that if there was a fat priest, he could get fatter. If there was a priest who liked dogs, he could buy more dogs. If there's a priest who fancied his liquor, he could have more liquor. He could buy better wine. That's what it was about. It had nothing to do with the war or politics or anything other than just sheer greed.
Well, once this Parsons Cause case is settled, is there a lull in kind of the conflict between the Crown and the colonists, or is it kind of a gradual thing that keeps on going towards maybe a revolution?
Well, there was a bit of a lull. I mean, you had things like the Sugar Act and all that, and that caused trouble in Massachusetts. But not much of a row here. It wasn't until the stamp tax. So about 2 years after that, the stamp tax came.
Can you speak to why are Americans so upset about this Stamp Act?
Well, if one wanted to teach a course in the arts and mysteries of mindlessness, they should teach about the stamp tax.
Or start a podcast.
Oh, well, I'm going to have to defer to you on that. So that's a bit out of my purview.
Sorry.
But no one could conceive anything more mindless than this tax, because it was designed to upset men like me, the men who ran the colonial legislatures. It was a tax on paper, on licenses, things that even on playing cards, things that the men in power, like myself, valued. And so it was naturally going to upset us, to upset those who were in charge, who were in the burgesses, who were on the council. At first, the gentlemen wanted to handle this business quietly, and they did until I got in there, and I'm afraid I stirred things up.
I was about to say, you don't strike me as a quiet kind of person.
Well, no, son. I had no right to be quiet because my neighbors and my friends who elected me, they sent me to the burgess to represent their interests and to protect them.
If I may, sir, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
You had said that at this time, the common people can't vote.
Right.
It's the landowners. So where does your political power how can you give the common people a little more power, a little more say? Like, what do you?
Oh, yes. Well, every man has his British rights.
Yes.
So there's being the rights of life, liberty, and property. And so these, the common man who doesn't have the suffrage, I didn't have the suffrage myself for many years, they may organize petitions. So they may have protestations. They may also address their grievances directly to the government. And they can even, as they did in Boston, burn down the house of a governor if it should please them. All right, the people have their rights and they have their power. Voting, suffrage is not a right. It's a privilege.
Wow.
Now, one could argue that the privilege ought to be given to more men. I could see merit in that. I surely would not want it to be given to less. But as the law stands in Virginia, you have to, of course, be a white man over the age of 21, and you must hold a certain amount of property, either land, 8 acres of land if you live in the country, which most Virginians do, or a house with a brick foundation if you live in the city, and that property must be unmortgaged. And that's been the law for quite some time. Even when we overthrew the government and created our new Constitution at the Fifth Convention, we did not change any of that.
The Fifth Convention. So you had already gone through 4 different conventions without declaring independence or without having a revolution. Can you kind of briefly just like what was the very first convention and why was it brought up?
Yeah, so the first convention was conceived at the Raleigh Tavern. After Lord Dunmore had put us
just
out.
down the street.
Yes, just down the street. Have you seen it, sir?
I haven't been inside yet. Maybe you can take me.
I'd love to take you down there. Yes, I've stayed there many nights, and it is a luxurious accommodation. I've never been forced to share a bed with more than 2 other men in that place, and it is absolutely wonderful.
Would we have to be bunkmates?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Right. You don't roll much, do you? Sir?
No, I guess I don't.
I have to watch those shoulders. You get some of them.
I'm a snorer, though, so that's
just about all of them are. What you do with that is you just kind of give them a little. You don't mind, dude. Just a little shove, and you stop snoring. You do the same to me now. I'm told I snore. You think I make noise in the daytime? You ought to see me when I'm asleep. In any case, so that's where we went. Lord Dunmore had dissolved us. He'd being the governor at the time, this being 74, because we had called for
the House of Burgesses.
Yes, the House of Burgesses. Yes, sir. We'd called for a day of fast and humiliation and prayer to pray for these poor souls. This was after what they called the Boston Tea Party. Boston was being enslaved. They were having their port blockaded, armed men in the streets, soldiers in the streets of a civilian population, during time of peace.
And
That's
King
what George had done.
He is a tyrant. We don't like him one bit.
He is a tyrant, yes, sir.
But even that, it seems like Boston was getting like dredged there. Like, why was he going so hard on Boston?
Well, 60 men out of a population of some thousands had smashed up tea, had rioted, boarded ships, seized tea, and smashed it. Now, they done that because they were being strangled by monopoly, that this Tea Act was going to put them out of their jobs. And this is all, Tea Act's a rather complicated thing, but long tale made short, it was to prop up the East India Company, what was about to go bankrupt.
Yes, yeah.
And so it was the state intervening to assist this company that happened to be owned by many members of Parliament, right, to fatten up their purses, things like that. By forcing cheap tea on us, they were going to save this company.
It was cheap tea, and there's also the matter of I think if I'm a member of King George's advisory board, I'm thinking, man, we have been in a very expensive war on a very far side of the world. We need something. We got to make up this money somehow. What if it's the people who we actually fought, or who we fought for and protected? What if they pay some of that back? I think that would be the argument that they would make. What do you say to that?
I would answer that we paid for that war in blood. I think of all the men who didn't come home in Hanover and every other county in Virginia. I think of their wives, the looks on their faces when they'd sit at the table and they'd look at the head of the table and see it empty. These were good men that I grew up with, gone for the King's War, gone to fight France. In any case, even if that is all just and fair, they could have asked us to pay. They never asked us. And they don't have any right to tax us, because the Magna Carta, this is going all the way back to the Magna Carta, one of the principles of English liberty, what separates us from the rest of mankind and the rest of the Western world is that men can only be taxed by those whom they have chosen to represent them. Nobody else, no one else in the whole world has the authority to lay taxes upon the good people of Virginia, except for the members of the Virginia legislature. The House of Burgesses, now we're going to call it House of Delegates, whatever you want to call it. That is the only institution on this earth what may take monies from the people of this country.
How do you see then, ideally, without a revolution, what is King George's role in this? If it's Virginia legislature needs to pass the laws and the governor needs to sign, is there even a need for the king?
Well, no, I don't see there's any need for the king at all. Now, in our new country, in our new constitution, we have no monarch and we have no hereditary aristocracy. We have abolished these obnoxious anachronisms of antiquity.
On paper.
Well, yes, and in practice. I will soon be inaugurated as the first governor of Virginia. That's going to be in 2 days' time. And we will also have our Senate and our House of Delegates sworn in as well. There'll be no House of Lords. There's not going to be any lords. There's not going to be any king. No man in Virginia will ever bend his knee before a monarch again.
I think, though, where I'm kind of getting the point, like no man would bend before a monarch, does no man really mean no man? Because there's, I think there's an enslaved population here that kind of probably feels like they're having to bend a knee to a monarch, even if there isn't a crown.
Yeah, that is true. So that is half our population, by my father's own record. My father, 2 years before he passed away, he made the finest map of Virginia that anyone has ever seen. And I will put that next to Mr. Fry's map, Mr. Jefferson's map, even Mr. Mitchell's map. My father's map was a masterpiece, so it was. And in the map, he takes accounting not only of our geographical peculiarities, but also of our population. And he was able to reckon that we have a population here in Virginia of 400,000 souls, not counting the Indians. Lord knows how many Indians there are. There's no way to know. But 400,000 whites and blacks, what live within the territory, and the Indians who are tributaries, like the Pamunkey and the Nottoway and them, come 400,000. Now, out of that 400,000, 190,000 be slaves.
Almost half.
Yes, and nearly half. And so that is of great concern to us. We've recently had this population used against us as a weapon. Dunmore, I'm not sure if you're aware, sir.
What did Dunmore do?
He committed the single greatest act of treachery that this country or any country has known. He offered freedom to the slaves of rebel masters if they would take up arms in the British cause. And by his definition of rebel, nearly every free white man who's not in Norfolk is a rebel. And so if that had not been dealt with swiftly, if that insurrection had not been crushed at the Battle of Great Bridge by General Woodford, there's no telling how far this mischief would have gotten. And it may well have turned Virginia into a giant Antigua. The bloody history of the slave insurrections of the West Indies would have been reborn here on a grander scale. And it would have destroyed this country. It would have burned Virginia from Princess Anne County all the way out to the Blue Ridge. I just thank God that the business was put down quickly. But it has not gone away. This weapon can be used against us because we are, and I'm saying this as a man who keeps slaves. I keep 32 slaves myself, but we are in the wrong on this.
Okay.
There is no justification for it. In philosophy, in religion. No, I cannot and I will not justify it.
But you'll participate in it.
I will, yes, sir.
Why do you think there's that disconnect? And I think it's not even just you. There are so many people like your George Washington.
Right.
He is going to, in his will, he will have his slaves will be freed upon the death of his wife, Martha, which I'm assuming makes her the least popular person on that plantation, but that's neither here nor there. There seems to be this dichotomy where you've got men who know that this is wrong and know that it's on the wrong side of history, yet they are still participating in it. Why do you think that is?
It's painful business, especially in this most enlightened age, in this country that loves liberty so well. And given that Christianity's chief peculiarity is its ability to soften the human heart, yet still we go along with this business. And the answer, sir, to be plain with you, is our own self-interest. Of course, as an elected man, I have to represent the interests of my constituents. My constituents are all slaveholders. So I must defend slavery when I'm in the House, and I must defend it when I am governor. Doesn't mean that I like it.
Yeah.
But there's no way of doing away with it. There are too many to be deported. Some speak about sending the slaves back to Africa and all this. Entirely impossible and fanciful notions.
I don't think that would be. Don't think that would be feasible at all. It'd be as ridiculous as naming a foreign capital after a U.S. president.
It would be so, yes, indeed. A doomed enterprise, for sure.
So we have the French and Indian War is finished, and we are kind of in this tit for tat with King George. We had the Boston Tea Party. I think that was kind of like where we last were, and the Sugar Act comes on the heels of the Boston Tea Party. Is that
that was prior?
That was prior. Okay.
Prior to the Stamp Act.
Oh, all right.
There's so many acts. It's difficult. Sometimes I myself cannot keep them all proper in my head.
So how are how are y'all able to communicate with each other? Because this is a very big stretch of land, and Boston is I don't even know how far it is from here in Williamsburg. But it's, I would imagine, like a multiple day, maybe week trip.
Oh, yes.
How are y'all able to communicate with each other? How do you know anything happened?
Well, we began reaching out to the other colonies in 1973, back after the Townsend duties and all that, and a great bit of hubbub. We started.
What are the Townsend duties?
Townsend duties, they were a second attempt to tax us.
Okay.
This time they weren't going to tax us directly on internal products like paper. They were going to tax glass, lead, tea, as it was imported. And they made the case that was different. Now, of course, it's nonsense. What it does is it preserves the precedent that Parliament may arbitrarily tax the colonies. And then they tried to soften it up by repealing all of those taxes, all the Townsend duties, except for the tax on tea. But again, keeping that principle. Didn't matter it was a 3-penny tax. They kept the precedent whereby they could arbitrarily tax the colonies.
You actually bring up a very good point there. It's just 3 pennies.
Yeah.
That's pennies, literally. It's not much. No, so why is there so much? Why is there so much passion and fury against just a 3-cent tax?
Because it's an anchor. It anchors the ship of despotism in the harbor of American waters with its cannons unfurled and pointed toward us. It establishes the precedent whereby Parliament can tax us without our consent. Doesn't matter if it's 1 penny, doesn't matter if it's a halfpenny. The tax never mattered at all. It was the principle of who could tax you. We don't believe that people we never met, who never saw our country, have the right to tax us. Only our burgessmen have that right. There was a plan by Mr. Galloway during the first Congress. And in that plan, he proposed that we create an American parliament right here in America. Yes, indeed. So that the House of Burgesses would elect men to a parliament over on this side of the water that would raise up these arbitrary taxes. And I was very much opposed to that because I am opposed to being taxed by the British Empire, and I am opposed to being taxed by an American empire as well.
It seems like it's more about centralized power.
Exactly
that you're concerned.
Centralized power that is unaccountable to the people, that is alien to the people. That is what I'm opposed to. So whether it calls itself British or American or Portuguese or whatever it calls itself, I shall be the constant enemy of arbitrary, unaccountable power.
And so where does a government get its just power?
From the people. They must derive their approval from the people every so often, not to get elected and then stand and stay in the House for 10 years. Not going back over and over again, but during regular periods of election for a limited time. I'm very pleased that my governorship, when it begins, will be limited to terms of 1 year.
Okay.
Every year, I have to go before the burgess, the people's representatives, and ask them, am I still worthy of your confidence, yea or nay? And even if they say yea, once, twice, 3 times, I shall still then have to step down and return to the people. So I don't get too used to living in that ridiculous house they call the palace. So I don't get too used to my fancy carriage, and to my 6 horses, and to all the trappings and flub-dubs and grandeur, the nonsense that goes along with this. It ain't good for a man. It isn't good for a man to have a fine coach like that, a gold coach with 6 horses. It ain't good for a man to live in a palace that could house 20 people. Nay, and a man should only be exposed to such power. Even men far greater than me, but even the best man in the world should never have such power for more than a few years. It's simply not good for him.
This idea is pretty revolutionary for the time. Where did it take seed?
Oh, that's an old idea. It goes back to the latter days of the last century, to Mr. John Locke. That's where I could list.
He seems like somebody that could be plagiarized really well.
Well, he could. Interesting point of that, sir, is I know I've heard rumors about the Declaration that Mr. Jefferson's working on, and some are claiming that he may have plagiarized Mr. Locke, but what he's doing is he's incorporating phrases that are so well known that every man will be able to easily tell their origin. Rather like my Liberty or Death.
Yes.
That wasn't mine. That was Mr. Joseph Addison, what wrote Liberty or Death. Give me liberty or give me death, from his play.
Nobody is ever going to remember him, man. I guarantee
you. Sure. Is that true? Joseph Addison.
I bet you will be more associated with it than anybody else.
I hope they forget me.
I'm semi-psychic. I think this is true.
You say so. Boy, that'd be a sorry thing if they forgot Mr. Addison.
Can you go back and tell us a little bit about that speech? I've heard it called the "Give me liberty or give me death."
Yes, sir.
Where did you give it? Who did you give it to? And what was your message?
Well, I gave it up at St. John's Church, what they called Henrica Church in those days, and that was during the second convention. So we had the first convention that had established the Congress. And then once Boston had been enslaved, once we knew they were coming for us, once they had begun to enforce the Intolerable Acts, we knew we had to do something about it. So we called it up there and not here, because Richmond was, simply harder to get at us there than it would be to arrest us here. And I laid a proposal before the gentlemen, and it was very simple. I say that Virginia should arm for its own defense. Because if someone means to attack you, and you cannot escape them, then what must you do?
You have to attack.
You have to fight.
Yeah.
Exactly so. And I have to say, with respect to the gentleman, that every man who voted yes for that could have been hanged.
Yeah.
It was an act of treason. And I made No votes about it.
Well, if it was treason, you should probably make the most of it.
Yes, exactly so. Where'd you get that?
It sounds pretty good too. It's funny though. I'm not for sure if you actually did. You say if this be treason, make the most of it. In another, it wouldn't have been this speech, but did you actually say that?
About 8 years earlier.
Okay.
Yes, sir. But in any case, with liberty or death, I had to make a speech to convince those gentlemen to vote for this. They were not going to. I did not have the majority, not even close.
Really? So before your speech, what your position was not the majority opinion?
Not at all. So no, I believe I probably, if I reckon right, I probably had about 40% of the House before the vote.
So you had, that is not a small number of people that you have to change their mind.
Yes.
So I think it speaks a lot to your oratory or oratorical skills that you were able to be able to like kind of convince them to go to the other side.
God was with me that day.
What other skills? I'm sure it wasn't just oratory. You have to use some politicking skills in the back rooms and stuff sometimes.
There's certain sort of animals in the woods, serpents and things like that, that'll rather play like they're dead when you first approach them, right? Well, it's saying that you're not a man, but some small mouse is something they wish to eat. And then the little creature gets closer and closer, and it might wiggle a little bit, but still looks harmless. And then all of a sudden it springs to life and devours its prey. Well, I followed the example that the good Lord laid before me there. See, I'll start off usually as though I'm a little confused, or I'm maybe forgot to read my notes that morning. I'm a bit sleepy, that sort of thing, and that'll put them in a state of calm. And I'll also show deference to my opponents, and then I will gradually warm it up a bit. Yes, indeed, put another log on the fire, another log still until the flame is burning bright. And that's what I did during that speech in Hanover. Forgive me, in Henrico when during the second convention. I started off very deferentially to my opposition, and I addressed their points bit by bit. I addressed what they had said, and then I simply asked them. Why has Great Britain sent these great scores of armies and navies to our shores? Has Great Britain any enemies in this corner of the world that would call for such an accumulation of military power? And I waited. I was quiet. I says, do they? Nobody said a word. And I says, no, sir, they have none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They are sent over to bind and rivet upon us those chains of which the ministry has been so long in forging. And I went on in that vein. And still, I did not have the majority. I had reached the climax of the speech, and I was beginning to cool the speech, and yet still I knew I didn't have them. And at that moment, I saw my wife's face in my mind's eye. She had passed away just 2 weeks before that. And I remembered when I attended the theater with her, when I had attended the play Cato, when it come through Hanover. And then it just came to me. And so I, as the gentlemen were heckling me, yelling, peace, peace, peace at me, I cry out, there is no peace. The war has actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will carry to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brothers are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it the gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear and peace so sweet to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. That line from Cato that I'd seen with my wife, Sally, all those years ago, just come to me. I never intended to say that. It just come to me at the moment. And that got me my votes. 5 votes. That's the majority I got. But a majority is a majority.
If I would have been there, it would have been 6, man.
You would have done it final.
Yes.
I know you would have. Yes, indeed. You'd have brought it down. Right.
It's so fascinating to hear how you gave that speech, and I'm going right back to your time as a kid, listening to Davies. Was that your pastor? Yes, yeah. Right. To Pastor Davies, and even then, whenever you were speaking to some of the intellectual heavyweights of your time, you're still not going for the head. You're aiming for the heart.
Yes, sir.
And I think that what you're showing there is how you get someone on your side. You make them feel more than you make them think.
All right, exactly. Because men, we are not machines. All right, we are alive, and indeed the Word. In the beginning there was the Word, and in the end so shall there be the Word. And it is the Word that sticks in a man's soul. Not the quill.
Is it something that shapes the opinions of your fellow man, or do you kind of like see how they're talking? See where I don't want to say the wind's blowing, but are you leading public sentiment, or are you kind of following it?
Well, I often find myself in trouble because I prefer to lead men in the proper direction rather than to follow the popular will, which is the easier way, of course, to be in public life. A man says he fancies cheese, then come out in favor of cheese. If he wants carrots, you come out for carrots, right? But you should tell him that carrots and cheese in the proper proportion will nourish him. And even if that's not what he wants, you don't tell a man what he wants. You don't do a man a service. You don't do justice by anyone by simply giving them what they want and agreeing to any fool thing they say, so long as you can derive power from it. You serve the people by telling them the truth. And if you don't tell them the truth, if you're not willing to do that, then you ought not to be in public service. You do not go into public service to become rich, nor do you go into public service to become loved. You go into public service to serve your fellow man and tell them the truth. And they can either have it or not as they please. I
think we've strayed a very far way from that mentality in present day politics, unfortunately. So we are in our current day kind of having a problem with people who run for office are gonna, hey, you want a carrot? I'll give you a carrot. They're gonna say whatever it takes, and they're also going to be trying to make a name for themselves and try to move up their stock in life. How do you think that? How do you think that like a country like that can start having more people like Colonel Henry, who has a public servant's heart? How do we get more people like Colonel Henry to run as opposed to somebody who's just trying to get their name out?
Well, it's up to the people who they choose. In a republic, you do men a great service, but you also do them a great injury. It's a hard thing to ask of a man to live in a republic. Because if you live in a monarchy and the government fails, then you look to the palace to find who to blame. If you live in an aristocracy and the government fails, then you look to the Senate House to find who's to blame. But if you live in a republic and the government fails and you want to see who's to blame, then you look in the mirror. So if men elect flatterers, then they have no one to blame but themselves. And if the men want servants, then they ought to elect servants. I'm sure they're there. Such men must be there in your age as they were in mine. So simply choose them.
It seems easy in theory, but there's a lot of campaign finance and stuff that we don't have to jump into today.
Lord knows.
So we are, we've gone into June of 1776 is kind of where we are now. And you said that you are the governor-elect.
Yes, sir.
So can you tell me a little bit, did you have to campaign for that office?
Oh, no, sir. No, a gentleman would never campaign for office.
Okay, so how, let's say that I want to be in the House of Burgesses. How am I going to be able to run without being like, hey, pick me? I want to be elected.
If you want to, of course, you maybe invite a few gentlemen over and you speak to about it, and they will speak to others on their behalf. Now, you can't promise men anything. In fact, it's against the law. One of my earlier court cases, Dandridge versus Littlefield, was trying to have an election overturned because Littlepage had promised his constituents things in order to get elected. So what you must do is you must be known to your people. They must know you to be a man of sense and reason. And if they want your opinion on this or that, you can tell them. And you also tell other men. And the other men, your friends, will go out and they will share the word as to what you believe in and what you don't. And they can either choose you or not choose you based upon their opinion of your opinions.
On the day of the election, do you have to give out a whole bunch of rum punch and all that?
No, that's illegal. That's illegal. No,
it's illegal. Okay. Your friends do that. Okay. So we call friends political action committees in present day. I guess that's the mix-up.
I see, sir. Well, it is unfortunately a tradition in Virginia that the friends of a candidate will hand out liquor on election day. And it's usually bumbo what they serve, which is a kind of cheap rum punch that men will swill and make themselves drunk with.
So what are elections like then? I imagine they're kind of rowdy affairs if everybody's kind of getting...
They're lively, to be sure. I don't much care for strong water myself.
Mhm.
You know, I fancy small beer, but I am unusual in Virginia, especially among the gentlemen. Most gentlemen prefer their stronger water. And so on election day, it'll be passed out and they'll all have their dances and their brawls and all that sort of thing. And then the election goes on itself.
Mhm.
And so 2 candidates up on the courthouse steps, each sit next to each other. Then you have the voter, the freeholder, the elector walk up, stand between these 2 men, and he says, I want to vote for this one, or I want to vote for that one. And he says it in front of everybody to make certain that that's who he actually wants. All right. And the clerk is there as well, and the clerk takes tally and then announces who wins. Half the assemblage is pleased, and the other half is furious, and they usually drink more and fight.
Well, let's say that I was one of your friends that was going to go out and say, well, if elected, Colonel Henry will do this and that. What was your platform?
Well, I would say no, sir. I'm not promising to do anything.
Mm.
I say you know my mind upon the matters of the day. If you don't know, you can ask me. But no, I will make no promises. It's illegal to make promises.
Not anymore. How do you see your role as governor in your time whenever there is such a distrust of centralized power?
Well, so fortunately for those who fear executive power, I have very little. When I take the office, I will not have the veto. I cannot call the assembly. All I can do is call out the militia in time of invasion. I have to answer to a executive council of 12 men, and I hope that they are in town. I hope there is a quorum.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, I will pray for this country because we're going to be in a difficult circumstance.
That's actually what I was about to get at. It's great to kind of have that, to not have such power, but at the same time, if there is an emergency, if something happens and Williamsburg gets under attack,
exactly.
How are you able to make decisions quickly to be able to take care of the citizens?
Well, for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so this is a reaction to the great excess of executive power that existed under the previous regime,
yes,
whereby the royal governors were the heads of the executive, the legislative, the judicial, and the church. And so I'm afraid the gentleman in the 5th convention overreacted.
You bring up a very good point. There is the reaction to this, or what causes this distrust of centralized power is all of this power rooted up into one person. And so whenever you are in that kind of environment, you think, well, clearly the answer is to get all that power out of that hand. It must need to go over
right,
there.
Pour it out of one cup into the other.
Into another.
Leaving the last cup empty.
And hopefully over time you realize, oh, maybe it's not supposed to be one or the other. Yeah. Maybe there's something in the middle that we could do.
Indeed. And that's what I advocated during the 5th, before I knew I was going to be governor. A stronger executive with checks and balances, all that, but with a veto that could be overturned by the legislature. That's what I argued for. I lost that particular argument.
You bring up a good point there with the veto, because that's one of the first things that kind of brought you into the forefront was the King's veto of the Two Pennies Act.
Well, Montesquieu teaches us that for a government to be truly free, it must be balanced. There must be a balance of power, and I fear in our current government there will be too much power in the legislature and not enough in the executive. As strange as that may be to hear me say, to hear Patrick Henry call for more executive power in time of war.
Right.
I think I will pray and I will do my utmost to make the finest of this Constitution, of this office that I can, but it is exceedingly limited. I have to warn the people that there's a great limit as to what I can do.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were one of the first of your contemporaries to really speak so adamantly about independence. Did you ever consider yourself, part of the British Empire?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and at what point did it change from I'm not a subject to the crown, I'm an American or a Virginian, or however you would see yourself?
Well, I had inklings of that for a long time, but when I was finally made up my mind once and for good, is when I read of the Intolerable Acts. And that wasn't just a matter of arbitrary taxes. The Crown took a constitution of a free country that had existed for more than 100 years and tore it to pieces. tore it to pieces. Said to this population of tens of thousands that you are no longer free men and free women. You are now slaves. Because a slave has no control over his own life, yay?
Mm-hmm.
A slave is given to the arbitrary whims of his master. And so too were then the people of Massachusetts made slaves by that act. Every right they had gone in the blink of an eye. And I knew that they would do the same to us, that they could do the same to us because, again, the anchor had been laid, the precedent had been set. And from that time on, when I read that paper on that morning, I knew that our days in the British Empire were finished, that we had to leave, that there was no way we could continue on in this empire.
It's interesting that you see what happened in Boston as a threat hitter in Virginia as well, and that it seems like Boston and Virginia, or I'm sorry, Massachusetts and Virginia are two very different types of colonies. It's different kinds of people, different cultures. How are y'all able to see eye to eye on this issue whenever it seems like there wouldn't be any other cause for unity?
Well, I'm pleased to say that the Massachusetts man is not so much an alien as one might imagine.
I disagree.
Have you known many of them?
No, I was just sorry.
Because that's what I expected too. I expected these wild, riotous men, these firebrands who had no regard for law and property and all that. I didn't meet any men like that in Congress. When I was sent to the Congress in 1974, I met very reasonable, wise, learned gentlemen. Samuel Adams and his cousin John.
I bet he makes a good beer.
He do. Yes, sir, he do. He had a keg of it brought down for us and it was very fine. And his cousin John, that is an extraordinary man.
Oh, yeah.
And he's the only man who agreed with me at that time about independence.
Oh, he's even more extraordinary. I get why you're saying that now.
I know, because the man who thinks as I do is obviously a genius. Yes, of course. Well, it was how unpopular and how dangerous that opinion was at the time.
Yes.
I mean, when I came back to my people in Hanover after the first Congress was over, we sat down in my parlor and they asked me, Mr. Henry, is this organization, what we did is we created the Continental Association, this embargo against England. They said, is this measure of commerce going to be successful? Will we have peace? And I say, no, it won't be. And they say, well, sir, why did you do it? And I says, because all of us Americans, all the 12 colonies, we have to learn how to work together. There's only 12, and that's 4 Georgia joined up. And so they looked at me and they said, well, so then what is going to become of us? And I said, there will be war, gentlemen. There will be lamentation. There will be blood. And at the end of it, we will take our place among the nations of the earth as an independent power in common confederation with our American neighbors. And they looked at me as though I was mad.
Oh,
as though I had just stepped off the moon.
Yeah.
They'd never imagined such a thing. And they left. They just give a nod, give a bow, and they got up and left. Just never had even considered the idea.
Well, so in my head, I just thinking back, Britain in 1776, they are the top dog. The number one preeminent power. And, I don't want to speak, lowly or anything, but the colonists are 13 colonies that are very disparate, kind of ragtag.
Right.
It is incredible to say we will have a war and our side, that ragtag army, we're actually going to come out on top. How did you have that kind of confidence whenever everything is telling you, no, there's no way that y'all are going to get a victory?
Well, if a man's thrown off a cliff and he reaches out to try to grab a thing and save himself, it's not because he's brave or because he's especially wise. It's because it's his last resort. He has to. We had no choice but to fight, though the odds were overwhelming. Although I knew we could win because with the others, we numbered some 3 million. And that brings back to your earlier inquiry as to the commonality between Virginia and Massachusetts. We are tied together by interest. Alone, Virginia is 400,000 souls. England is 8 million. Even with the distance of water, 8 million will always defeat 400,000. Simply the way of it. But 3 million against 8 million, with the length and breadth of the Atlantic Ocean between us, there is a chance. Although I knew we still could not win, even united as we were. It wouldn't be enough. We needed foreign allies.
Yes.
We could not, I knew that going all the way back to 74, we could not win without France, without Spain.
Hmm. Why would they be, why would you look to France or Spain to be potential allies?
Well, because they don't care for England. They are jealous of their defeat in the last war.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yes, indeed. A rather clever Italian fellow said that some time ago, and he was right. It's absolutely true. They lost New France. Right? They were brought low. The Spaniards lost the Floridas. They had even for a time lost Havana, almost lost their largest sugar colony. They were both powers were beaten and humiliated by the English. Now they are absolute monarchies. They are Catholic powers. They are despotic by every means. We have absolutely nothing in common with them, not religion, not language, not anything except a hatred of England. And that is enough. And so what we wanted from them was the support of their vast militaries as well as their powder, shot, and ball. Because that was the main reason why we could not win alone, is because we cannot manufacture much of anything. In Virginia, for 150 years, all we done is we brought over slaves and plowed fields and planted tobacco. Slaves, plow, and tobacco. That's all we know, right? We cannot make gunpowder. We cannot conceive a blast forge whereby a cannon might be made. We can make muskets, yes, but in very small quantities, and they're all of different calibers.
I'm sorry, do you mean that logistically, or do you mean like by law, the Crown wouldn't allow?
I mean, there was an unconstitutional law that we abided by for more than a century called the Navigation Acts, which stated that it was illegal for the colonies to manufacture most things on a great scale. And we did not protest that because it benefited us. It gave us and the Carolinians a near monopoly on tobacco. So we didn't bother about it. That's our own fault, right? And so I hope after the war, well, if we win, and I believe we will, God willing, we must turn our eyes away from old Topo and begin to diversify our commerce. Wheat, grain, and millet, okay? Also manufacturers right here in Virginia. With our great rivers, we can devise workshops the same way what they have in England. We can make ourselves, Virginia, one of the greatest nations on this earth. We surely have the means to do so. And I hope that we will free ourselves of this dependency upon slaves and upon tobacco. But we can't look to that until the war is over, of course.
It kind of comes up to where it's not necessarily about winning the war. It's about not losing the war. So whenever you're starting out, are you thinking this could be a short war? We can like win quickly, or from the get-go where this is going to take time and a lot of men?
I've never had any illusion about that. It's going to take a very long time. And a lot of young men will have to die before it's over.
Most times whenever a war is started, both sides are like, we are going to be in and out just like that, And so that's usually wars. It's a lot easier to get into a war if you think, oh, this will be over tomorrow versus this is going to take time. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is you had to have basically no other way in your mind to be able to come to terms with Great Britain than to like actually have to go to war.
Oh, indeed. It's a horrible business. It takes away the young men, of course, but it also drains the land. It causes the slaves to run away, the slaves to contemplate uprising with all the young men gone, no one to protect the women. It's a horrible business. The worst business, the most expensive and bloody and heart-wrenching business a government could ever conceive of. And it would be the absolute last business that I would have chosen for our people. If there had been any other way, I would have took it. Any other way that preserved our liberty. But going back to that cold winter day when I read of the intolerable acts passed by Parliament, the destruction of Boston's Constitution, the closing of their harbor, the reduction of thousands, scores of people to slavery on the arbitrary whim of bloated politicians 3,000 miles across the ocean, I knew then that the horrors of war were the only alternative to the horrors of slavery.
Yeah. So if your options are war or slavery, you're gonna choose
liberty or death.
Yes. Yeah, liberty. Yeah. But whenever you kind of look back, what do you see as some of your best talents that has gotten you to where you are now, and not just your oratory? What else?
Well, I'm awful fond of people. I simply love to talk to everyone, just like I'm talking to you this morning. And it's a pleasure to speak to men, to know their minds. Every man has a story. Every man is a creation. Just the way a fine watchmaker will make a beautiful pocket watch, so is every man made by the hands of God.
Mm.
And to learn the mystery of every man is a great joy to me. And so I suppose it's my fondness of people, being in public life, what has done me some good. And also my interest in this world. There's so much to read and so much to learn. And so I've always had a great fondness for books. Mr. Jefferson and I, we often jest with each other, and he often jests that I don't read anything. And I don't read anything in comparison to that great gentleman.
I was about to say, yeah, compared to him, nobody reads anything, though. So
I should say that we read in a different fashion, whereas Mr. Jefferson will read 1,000 different books upon every subject. What I will do is I will take the same book, like Mr. Blackstone's commentaries, for example, and I shall read it again and again and again until I understand. And so I absolutely am in love with books and in love with knowledge, and I try to get my hands on everything that I can.
How would you define the pursuit of happiness?
That's an interesting phrase.
Yes.
I suppose that's different answer for every man. Just what brings you joy in this life, in this world. For me, that would be time by the fireside with my children, playing the fiddle, telling a story, and maybe going out for a hunt and smoking my pipe in the evening. That is my pursuit of happiness. That is what all this is for when it comes to me. But every man is going to have to find his own answer to that question.
Do you think that every man or everyone is entitled to the pursuit of happiness?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are all made in the image of God. We are all made equal, as Mr. Locke said, and we are all entitled to liberty. Brings back to the question of slavery. I often think about the judgment when the judgment comes. I'm going to have to stand before the Lord, and I'm going to have to give account. And I doubt not that I will be asked why I, the advocate of liberty, saw fit to enslave so many people, maybe as many as 100 people by the time I die. And I will not be able to give a proper answer to that. But I still know I'll have to answer for it to God, and if anyone remembers me after I die, to posterity as well.
It's so fascinating to me, the kind of the cognitive dissonance with many of the founders. Thomas Jefferson argued that an enslaved person was entitled to human rights or basic rights in the I think 1740s or 50s. I can't remember the exact decade, but he did that. And then he even writes, everyone's entitled to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And there's an enslaved person right next to him as he's writing it. It kind of blows my mind that you could say that and then be in that present reality. That doesn't, jive with my head, I guess.
Well, it is not just for Mr. Jefferson, but for me and for all the rest of us, it is entirely inconsistent. I don't pretend it's anything other than a failure on our part.
So I think that there is a y'all do some very big things, and we as we get further removed from the present day time, or 1776, it's almost like an idolization, and people aren't necessarily. It's just would be the founding fathers. It's not Patrick Henry, George Washington, but it seems like what you're telling me is that y'all are all human beings. You have your own faults.
I hope that they're not going to turn us into demigods and that sort of thing. That would be the worst thing you could do.
I mean, I'm kind of idolizing you in my head right now, so it's very, very easy to do that, sir. I'll tell you.
I'm just a man. I'm just a man. I lived in troubled times, and I wanted a quiet life, a regular sort of life. I wanted to be the sort of man that nobody would have ever remembered. If I could have lived my life with my wife, if she had kept her health and my children by my side, had plenty of food for them and a roof over our heads, I did not want anything more than that. I never would have wanted more than that. But God wanted more from me. And so I was called to answer my time. And when my time is done, when the crisis has abated, I want to go home. I don't enjoy this. I want to go home and live a normal life. And I was just a man. And my colleagues were just men. And if we were extraordinary, it's because we had to be.
Yeah.
But you can be as well. The fire that burned in us is in your breasts as well. You just have to answer the call of your times. Because remember, in a republic, when you want to know who to blame for something, you look to the mirror. But when you also want to know who the hero can be, then you look in that same mirror, and you will find him there.
I believe that whenever this all gets said and done, someone asks Mr. Franklin, this could be just a kind of colloquial sort, but someone asks Mr. Franklin, what kind of government do you have? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it.
That's very well said. Yes, sir. If you can keep it. And I believe you can. We're good people here. This is a good continent full of good, honest men and women. We will defy the odds as we did before.
Let's just try to get them more in public life.
So let's do it. Yes, indeed.
Colonel Henry, thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for acting out with me.
All mine, sir. God bless you, sir.